But from downtown to where we are, I don't think I could walk it still.
I can barely make it 3 stops without getting lost.
Welcome to My Hill to Die On, episode 38.
Everyone has things they're passionate about.
Things we want our friends to try and experience.
So we've convinced each other to try different things.
And we talk about these experiences to see if we can just get one more person
to join us on our Hill to Die On.
We appreciate all our listeners coming along with us in this journey.
And if you ever think to yourself, hey, I really like these guys and what they do, and I wish I could support them and help them in some way, keep this thing going, despite, drinks and server costs and all that sort of thing.
Well, now you can. We have a small membership program where you can help support us and what we do. Go ahead and visit myhilltodieon.com/members for details. But what does becoming a member do besides keeping this boat afloat?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Well,
you did ask, didn't you? Yeah. As of this point, we will be listening to our members' suggestions as possible topics to discuss in the future. That way, if there's something that you think we should see or read or experience, we'll attempt to see what's at the top of this hill that you're willing to die on.
We may also send out surveys to our members so that you can add questions or trivia or even suggest a game we should play on our games episodes.
Have we ever decided what we're referring to our members as?
No, we haven't. We've kind of had a few ideas, but never really decided on something.
Hey, if you guys got something, shoot it out there. That might be another way you could help us. But remember, if you'd like to support us in any way, myhilltodieon.com/members for more details. As for my spring break...
Yeah, what else have you done spring break?
You saw that I have officially launched the first video on the YouTube channel, where I talk about storylines and what makes good storyline and what makes good storytelling in video games. So I used Shadow of the Colossus as my first one, because that's one that I feel was easy enough to talk about the storyline and everybody knows it. So that one's out. I perhaps talked a bit too long.
Yeah, if anything, that's what I was thinking. It's 22 minutes.
It's 22 minutes, and the sad thing is, that's after I cut it down.
Yeah.
It was originally like half an hour.
Just curious, how many audio takes did it take you?
In total?
Yeah, did you record audio 4 or 5 times?
No. Does it sound like I did?
No, I was curious. No, it sounded good. That's what I was thinking. They all sound pretty similar if you took more than one take.
Yeah, I took it all in one take, basically. Now, that being said, in the whole process, I recorded it once in a bunch of different takes, and it came out sounding really weird and disjointed. So I said no. Then a week later, after I rewrote the script, I did it again, all in one take, and then I listened to it and found it boring. And so then I jazzed up the script a bit more to add a bit more of my personality into it. And then did one final take. There's 1 or 2 things that I recorded separately, but it's like one sentence here and there. And I made sure that I got it all so that it sounded similar.
If anything, I think I've definitely enjoyed the humor so far. That's the best part. The little quips and...
I will say that in writing this, it made me realize that as I progress through the video, it becomes a more and more serious tone because the tone of the story that I'm talking about is serious and is sad. There were less and less things that I could quip about. But the next one has a lot more that I can joke about and a lot more positivity and happiness that I can express in that one. So I'm looking forward to that one. And that one's also going to be in a slightly different style where I'm not going to focus on doing the almost textual analysis style, which is what I did with this one. The next one will be more focused on just retelling the story. So we'll see how that one goes, and I think that one will be interesting and fun to play around with. So far, I have had a small number of people watch it.
Let's see, not bad. More than our uploaded podcast videos.
Yeah, well, true. But I think the big difference there is our uploaded podcast videos don't really have too much going on the screen.
Yeah, that's true.
Aside from that, I was trying to get a bunch of other things done.
Did you get to do any Hanami?
No, I didn't. I stayed inside. I'm one of those people who is trying to be good about the whole thing.
Looking at what you've made in your side project here,
yeah,
that's a lot of editing. That's a lot of work. All of those titles, all of the times your guy moves with his mouth, that's a lot of editing.
It was a lot of editing.
Your guy is great, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've already said I think it's a wonderful idea. It seems you're only going to have one of them on screen at a time. You're never going to have the guy with his arms in his pockets and the guy with his arm pointed out. Or you're only going to have one on at a time. I don't know how this works in DaVinci Resolve. I would love to know, actually.
And actually, I think that I'm leaving DaVinci Resolve after this first one.
Oh yeah, where are you going to go now?
I think I'm going to do Final Cut.
You're going to buy Final Cut?
Yeah.
Well, if you do it in Final Cut, I think that your best bet would be to do multicam clip for that guy. Because then it's super easy to change from one depiction of the guy to another depiction of the guy to another depiction of the guy, and change, you can modify where that starts and where it ends super easily.
Yeah.
So if you do that in a multicam clip and you just have one track on your video line that is the guy, that way he'll only be one at a time. You don't have to worry about crossfades, and you always cut him, right? Does he ever crossfade? I didn't see that.
There's one or two crossfades near the end, but it's when we get to a specific part in the music section.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And even with multicams, you can do that easily too, but it would make it super simple to say mouth, I want the mouth one, I want the not mouth one, I want the mouth one, I want the arm one, I want the arm one. It'd be super simple to select at different spots where you want it.
And I did something pretty similar to that in DaVinci.
Okay.
So the reason why I'm leaving DaVinci after this first one is the fact that it is not, at least from my experience with it, it was not a stable product.
Oh.
It crashed at least 10 times in this process.
Oh.
And among those, I lost at least 2 hours worth of work in total.
Yeah, that's rough.
Which is why after I got to a certain point, I said, I'm going to finish this in DaVinci because my project is here and I've gotten this far in it and I'm not going to switch horses halfway through the race.
Mm-hmm.
But once I am done with DaVinci because it was not a fun experience.
Yeah, I like Final Cut. I want to try DaVinci Resolve because I have a Blackmagic camera and I can shoot in Blackmagic RAW and then can edit it natively. Yeah, I mean, it would be better for the camera that I have, but at the same time, I'm not doing cinematic stuff enough to really need that feature. That's the other problem.
I just look at it and go, it's there. I gave it a shot.
But Final Cut Pro is going to be an investment.
I understand that. See, the problem is I may have already caved and bought it.
Final Cut's a great program.
I had the money. I mean, I just also had a check come in from the U.S. government.
Oh, okay. Ooh.
Into my bank account over this past week and said, okay, well, that's a good sign. I'll just, cave and buy Final Cut now. Because what is a U.S. government stimulus check but for me to stimulate the economy by buying things from Apple?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm just doing my part for my country.
Well, one thing I did over break is I went to Fuji-Q Highlands with my family.
Oh.
I was thinking that we're not going to do anything. And my wife was like, so which amusement park are we going to? And I was like, oh, okay. I'll look into that then, shall I? Because, since I had given up on Disney, we had discussed, we'll go shopping. And I thought I said, so we're not going to any parks. But then my wife was like, on Monday, she said, what amusement park are we going to? And I was like, oh yeah, okay. I'll look into that then.
So you didn't want to go to this one?
Super Nintendo World? Where's that?
USJ.
Universal Studios. Oh. Well, I didn't want to go to Osaka. I wanted to go at driving distance. And Fuji-Q is probably pushing the driving distance since it's...
Yeah, that's definitely pushing
2 hours away. But actually, it was surprisingly good. One of the things I was trying to figure out was, all right, so I wanted to go to an amusement park that had rides that my daughters would enjoy, but there's an amusement park near Tokyo called Toshimayan,
Mhm.
and I wanted it to be better than that. And Toshimayan is now closed because they're going to build some kind of Harry Potter monstrosity there.
Oh, yeah, but that'll be lovely.
Oh, yeah. Well, I do wonder how lovely it will be. Well, what I was trying to figure out was Toshimayan had a lot of kiddie rides, right? Like you'd go on, 2 minutes later you'd be off. Like you'd go on some boat that goes around and you'd squirt some things with the water gun there, or you'd ride some old-fashioned cars. And they were fun when my kids were toddlers, which was great. But now my kids are no longer toddlers. And Fuji-Q Highlands has basically the definition of the park is the fast rides that it has. So it's like, well, do they have anything in between that range? Like, I know they have, because they have a Thomas Land. So if they have a Thomas Land, they have a Toddler Land. And they have the fast rides, but what's in between those two? And I didn't know. So I was like, so I told my wife, like, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. I don't know what they have. Maybe we're spending the whole day in the Toddler Land because we're not doing the fast rides. But it actually ended up pretty good. There are a bunch of middle-of-the-line rides. And one of the games that my wife and I tried to play, too, was you can actually enter the park for free and pay for each ride if you want to. Or you can get the free pass, which is not, I mean, it's a little bit expensive. Well, I think it's expensive, but I guess if you're riding the fast rides all day long, it's super cheap because the fast rides are 2,000 yen each. But we did some quick calculations and we're like, well, because the rides we're riding, we risked it and said, let's just get the free pass so that we don't have to worry about the stress of it. We think we'll either just break even, maybe be slightly under is kind of what we were thinking. But the free pass will give us to not have to worry about the stress of like, we have to go buy tickets and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And in the end of the day, doing all the math, adding everything up, we just barely made it cheaper by buying the free pass. We did just enough rides to make it cheaper, which was good. Yeah, they do have some good rides. I am finding that I no longer have the stomach to do as many rides as I used to, which is very disappointing to me. My wife reminds me that I really wasn't a great roller coaster rider when she first married me, but I am definitely not as good a roller coaster rider now. It is a sad reality for me. But I was being very careful because it's like, I have to drive 2 hours home. I can't get too sick to my stomach on these rides. I have to be able to recover quick enough to drive home. So
makes sense.
I sat out the last ride, which worked out fine. Some of the rides were pretty good. I mean, my youngest daughter loved the swings, the spinning swings ride, which you see at carnivals all over America, right? They had one of those, which was great. They even had one that went up in a tower that would get you 50 meters up in a tower. And that looked pretty fun. Since my daughter loved the swing ride, I was like, oh, we should try this one that goes really high. But no, they were too afraid of it, which is too bad. I kind of wanted to see what their reaction was. My oldest daughter really wanted to do the log flume ride, which it's not really much of a log flume because you go up the hill, you come down, and you have a humongous splash at the bottom, and then you're done. Like, it's all of,
30 seconds.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess it's all of 2 minutes. So, like, it's very short. But looking at the splash from the side, I was like, oof, this is very splashy. I don't think we should do it. We're all going to get wet, and we don't have any dry clothes. But my daughter really wanted to do it, so we're like, fine, we will all do it. Actually, my wife decided we're all going to do it. I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do it then. But I am glad I did. So we bought the 100 yen rain jackets, which was great. And then we were all very careful. We all put them on very carefully. Of course, they're one size fits all, which means that for my daughters, they were long. And for me, it went just below my knees. And I was like, my shoes and my pants are going to get soaked. And one of the things we didn't know, so I sat next to my youngest daughter and tried to make sure she was all buttoned up. And my wife sat next to the other two daughters. And I checked my youngest daughter out. She had her stuff all buttoned up. She had her hands in the middle holding the straps of the hood that she pulled over your head. And then I had actually turned the hood 90 degrees so that she was looking out through the clear stuff and the opening was off to the side. I was like, oh, great. She's going to be perfect. But then, of course, my youngest daughter, who loves to enjoy the ride, when the boats tipped down and started going down, she lifted her hands up to enjoy the ride, and she let go of her hood straps, and her hood flew off her head. And when she's at the bottom, she got soaked on her head, and then, of course, it dripped into her sweatshirt. I was like, so close to being perfectly dry. So she got a bit wet. This happened to my oldest daughter too. She didn't realize that she had to hold the straps of her hood and it flew off her head. Happened to my wife, but she was able to get the hood on fast enough again at the bottom because the splash is so huge in the ride that it feels like it just keeps raining after you come down. Like it's just rain and rain and rain and rain. I'm sure it's only 10 seconds, but it feels like forever. So my oldest daughter and my youngest daughter got wet because their hoods flew off, but the other three of us survived with almost, like, my shoes got a bit wet, but they dried out pretty quick. I was glad I did it in the end, because after all my worrying, I did only get a little bit wet, and I was expecting my family to get much more wet than it did in general, and luckily we did get that wet. They had a Toy Story Mania type ride. It was based on Naruto. So you'd go around in the little carts shooting the things on the screen with your 3D glasses. That was quite fun. It was basically like Toy Story Mania, but I would say it was pretty good still. I mean, everything is pretty much the same except the line doesn't have the same experience as Toy Story Mania's line does, right? So possibly it's a little shorter. I don't actually know that for sure. But anyway, that was pretty fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did that ride, because later I was like, oh, that ride closed. Things close quickly. It's very interesting. I actually saw this on a YouTube video before I went, because I was like, oh, I'll watch a review. But of course, the YouTube reviews do all the fast rides. They don't do any of the slow rides. So I just like, well, I'm not going to get any picture of that. But one of the things they mentioned was that they will close rides when the wait time goes longer than the park closing time, and the park closing time is 6. So some of the big fast rides closed at like 4:15, 4:30, 4:45, and they'd be announcing it on the loudspeakers saying that these rides are now closed because the wait times exceed the park opening times. So that's quite interesting. So I did see later that the Naruto ride closed at 3, so we had done it just before 3, so we're like, whew, snuck that one in. Didn't realize it was closing early. And some other rides closed early, but the rides that we wanted to do stayed open, so that was kind of nice. Anyway, it is very interesting, and I definitely agreed with the guy on YouTube, the video review, that said there's an amazing amount of stuff in the small amount of land that it is.
Yeah.
They really squeeze the rides in, but you don't feel cramped. And even on a semi-busy day like we went, I didn't feel like there was people all over the place. So
I think amusement parks here in Japan tend to do that pretty well, where they have, in like this tiny postage stamp of a land, they cram so much in.
And I think it's fun that the fast rides are basically flying over your head half the time, too. I kind of liked that. That each ride wasn't segmented off into its own... I mean, some of them were. Some rides are segmented off into their own areas. But some of the faster rides were going throughout the park. Fujiyama was closed. I actually did want to ride Fujiyama with my daughters, because I figured that would be... Of the fast coasters, that would be the one they could do. But that one was closed. That is disappointing. I think we could have done that. Although I am wondering if I could have actually done it. I would have enjoyed. Big Thunder Mountain, I don't seem to get dizzy at. But I think it was the spinning rides. I think my daughter wanted to do the teacups. And I don't think I like teacups anymore. That I definitely can't do. If I hadn't done teacups, probably could have done more. I can't do the spinning rides. I think I can do roller coasters, but I can't do the spinning stuff. If my daughters want to do teacups, they got to do it by themselves now. And actually, I realized we snuck we didn't sneak anything, but my youngest daughter, it was the last day she could enter as the Yochien. We went on March 31st, so it was the last day she could go in under the Yochien ticket. On April 1st, she changes to Shogako, or elementary school aged. So because she entered as Yochien, there has to be an adult with her on every ride. But next time she can do the teacups by herself. That's it. Now she's going to be Shogako, so she can do the teacups by herself because she'll be elementary aged. It's up to them now. I don't have to go anymore.
Yep.
Anyway, so that was quite fun. You've been to the Fuji-Q?
I believe I have. I'm trying to remember right now. That one, I think I've been... Yes, I think I've been to that one.
Did you ride any of those fast rides?
I don't think I have. I think we've discussed this before, but I am what we traditionally call in most circles a coward.
You mean you didn't try the roller coaster where they're basically flipping you around the whole time you're riding it?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
That was quite an interesting ride to watch. And then there's one that goes super fast, some kind of linear induction thing, I think. They just fire you down the track. That one looked interesting. And then they have a ride where you climb vertically instead of climbing up a slope. The roller coaster climbs vertically up and then tips you over, and instead of going 90 degrees down, I think you go like 102 degrees. So basically you go back in on itself and then scroll down. Because, a 90-degree drop would have been too simple, so I'm going to flip you over even more. That's kind of funny. They have fun names too. I forget what all the names are now, but
Yeah, I do not remember because it's been a long time.
I think the one that's spinning you around while you're on the roller coaster is Eijanaika, which I think means, is it really like that? Something like that, right? Anyway, they have funny Japanese names. Anyway, so we had a good day.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, we had said like, oh, if we get bored at Fuji-Q, we can just go to some nice flower parks in the area. So we can go sit and enjoy some hanami and then drive home. So that was kind of the plan, like, we'll probably run out of rides and then we'll go do that. But ended up, we stayed the whole day. We left only slightly before closing time so that we could get home at a normal hour. And interesting, that guy that did the review, he came to Japan and did as many amusement parks as he could. And he basically rated Disney Sea as the best amusement park in Japan. And I think I saw a video on his channel too that he might be arguing that Disney Sea might be the best amusement park in the world. That's a pretty high bar.
That is a very high bar.
But I do agree that Disney definitely has atmosphere. And I would say that even Fuji-Q did a pretty good job of it still. But you can't compete with Disney. In fact, I was looking, like, the carousel that we rode on at Fuji-Q had great-looking horses. Of course, the tops were all worn down where all the people were touching them. I was just noticing that the fence around the swings ride was a bit worn down in certain areas, and I noticed that some of the panels had been replaced and some of them had. Like, it definitely didn't feel like a worn down park. I felt like there were some areas that were worn down, but most areas were still very nice. All the toilets were great. Like, it was still a very nice park, showing some signs of wear. And I was thinking the amount of effort Disney must put forth to avoid signs of wear is tremendous. You know, how often are they replacing pieces of fence or things like that? I think they also do work to prevent you from touching things. I was noticing like there are hedges that create fences. And, you know, nobody's leaning against hedges, right? So you don't need to replace the fence then. I think they do things like that. But that being said, there are fences. Yeah, they must do a lot of work to prevent against wear.
Well, I mean, they tend to do that with a lot of things here. Think of how much effort they put into, like, all the castles.
Yep. One of the things I was thinking, too, is I don't remember the horses on the Disney carousel. This carousel definitely had wooden horses. And the paint, it was chipping a little bit. I mean, it seemed like pretty good paint, but it was still chipping a little bit. And actually, one of the reasons I noticed it was because my camera rubbed up against it, and the rough edge of my camera, some of the paint came off. And I was thinking, it's a real wooden horse. So it actually felt good, like that horse, right? Like it felt like, this is a wooden horse with paint on it.
This is a solid wooden horse. This is not like
a toy.
Yeah.
Like it was well built.
Exactly.
And the only downside is that the paint's going to chip off because it's made of wood. And while it has glazed paint, it's still going to come off. So, yeah, I thought it's not good quality in the fact that it will wear, but it's good quality in the fact that it feels good to sit on it and ride on it. So,
yeah,
that was kind of interesting. I don't remember the Disney horses enough to compare it, but I was thinking, wow, this is a very good carousel horse.
You always hear the thing where when it comes to economics, I think it comes down to, let's see if I remember the phrase right. You can have something good, you can have something reliable, and you can have something cheap. And you can only choose two of them. So you can have something that's good and reliable, but it's not going to be cheap. Or you can have something that's reliable and cheap, but it's not going to be good. Like, in this case, feel good to sit on. But it's going to be reliable. It's going to be there. So that's kind of where I was thinking with how you're describing these horses is Fuji-Q was like, no, we want it to be good and I wouldn't say cheap. Probably good and reliable.
And I think that on two ends of the spectrum, being Disney and Toshimayan, I would say that Fuji-Q is definitely more than halfway toward Disney in terms of its quality. And I think that's great. I was very pleasantly surprised at that. I was like, wow, this park it was better than I expected. I thought it was going to be, I mean, a bunch of fast rides for sure, but then not have much appeal beyond that. And I think that's not the case. I think that there was a good atmosphere in the park. It was very clearly laid out. There were lines on the ground for you to follow on how to get to the different areas of the park. In fact, I had a question. We wanted to put our jackets in a coin locker, and the lady said, yep, just follow the yellow line over to there, and you'll pass the lockers.
Mm-mm.
So it was very easy to do that.
Very well laid out.
Yeah. So I don't know. I enjoyed that. While, yes, there's focus on the fast rides, and that being some of the big draw probably, there was a lot of other good things in the park to bring people there. And not just a toddler area. There was stuff for my tweeny-aged kids. The food wasn't too bad, and there was a lot of options. Oh, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
To find out whether or not you have a ticket for the ride,
Yeah.
you walk up to a machine, and it does facial recognition on you to see if you have a ticket for that day. So they take a picture of you as you enter the park, and then from that point on, your face is your ticket. You walk up to a ride, and it takes a picture of your face, and it says, oh, yep, this person's got a all-day pass. So that's how they do tickets. That was quite interesting. I think it's a bit slow, but it does prevent people from losing their tickets, that's for sure. You don't have to worry about any of that, especially because it's a park where you can possibly enter for free and buy tickets for each ride, which I'm assuming there can be a lot of fraud there, where people just print out their own tickets for the rides. I'm assuming that this is a very good system for that. Because Disney, everybody buys full passes, right? There's no other way to enter the park. But this park, since you can enter for free, they need a better way of knowing whether or not you have a full day ticket or not. So this seemed like a very foolproof method for that. I do wonder how they handle twins, but hey, there are probably differences that the computer sees that we don't see.
Maybe.
So I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool. They say during the announcements too, you must keep your mask on at all times, except when you're doing facial recognition. Facial recognition and eating. Every other time you got to have your mask on. So that was quite fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. I'm glad you were able to do something amusement park related.
Yeah. It's not Disney, but it was fun.
You know, not everything can be Disney. I will apparently have tons of time to listen to / read books on an airplane.
Okay, good. Okay.
Although when the thing opens back up, I need to call them up because they switched flights on me.
Oh.
They switched my flight, and I am not happy with it.
Oh, did they move you later on the way back?
No, they moved me to the same day, but rather than the one layover I had, I now have 3 layovers.
3 layovers.
To get to Chicago.
Are you going to get money back?
No, they haven't given me anything back, so I'm going to call them up and be like, no, this is not okay. Because in no way, shape, or form should I need to take 4 different planes to get from Tokyo to Chicago.
No, that's either direct or 1 layover at the most.
Yeah, I'm okay with 1 layover. And also, they switched it from the entire travel time being 15 hours to the entire time in transit being 29 hours. So
either they're giving you a ton of money back.
I will only accept that if they are like hooking me up. There is no way, shape, or form.
Yeah. If you did first class the whole way and got to get lounges at each time?
Yeah, I would take it.
Yeah.
I would be like, fine, I'll do it if you get me into first class. But I'm paying money to fly this flight. I should not have to suddenly go, hey, yeah, I'm okay flying 30 hours when I had originally booked for a 15-hour flight, simply because you guys aren't going to fly the plane that I was originally booked on. Right. Okay, I can understand that. But there's no reason you should shift me to that. No. So they're closed on Sunday, so I can't call them tomorrow, so I have to wait till Monday.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not normally a confrontational person, but I'm feeling mighty confrontational on this one. Now, maybe it's due in part to the fact that I've already not had a great week, and then this drops on me. So they're probably catching me at the worst time to do some... Normally, I'm the type of person who, like, you do something awful to me, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess. That makes sense. No. I am not... I cannot abide by this.
3 layovers, so you have 4 total flights?
4 total flights.
Man, where do you land in America first? Do you happen to land in New York and then fly to LA? And then fly?
No, the thing that it says right now is I go to Vancouver, then to Calgary, then to somewhere else in Canada, and then to Chicago. I stop in Canada 3 times to then make it to America.
Tiny little hops.
And they're tiny hops. They're like, okay, you're up in the air. Okay, you're down. No. And I've told people on this podcast how I feel about flying.
Yeah.
I want to spend as little time on a plane as possible.
If they're the little hops too, the first class benefit will not help too much.
No.
But the lounges would. You know, you could argue for first class to America. That's a big ask, but access to the lounges would be beneficial, I guess.
Even so, I'm just thinking, you know what? You can't screw me over this badly. Yes, I know I got the cheap ticket, but no.
It's pulling the rug right out of under you.
Yeah, because, I mean, you cannot just do that. I either want all of my money back and I'll get a different ticket, or
really sweeten the deal somehow.
Yeah.
Because
you
wouldn't have paid that much money for that ticket.
No, I would have paid maybe half of that for that ticket.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, I would not have chosen that ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was a great price, I would not have chosen that ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I need to track them down and give them a call. Because Ryan's not happy. So I'll let you know how it goes. And I'll let the listeners know how that goes the next time we record. And just watch, it's going to be like, yeah, I gave up. I let them abuse me because I don't have any self-respect.
Alrighty, so today, the book that we're reading later has a big event that kind of shapes the rest of the book. And the prologue of the book starts with these people reacting to the big event, and then you see how it shapes them later on. So I thought we would pick 2 times that we have learned or experienced some big news in our lives.
Mm-hmm. I think you suggested that we talk specifically about the 2 big events that have happened in our lives
and then you get
more
on.
recently,
Yeah.
which would have been 9/11 and 3/11.
Right. September 11 and March 11, because they're pretty big events in our lives.
Yeah.
When I came up with the topic, I was like, what else do I pick? I mean, I think I have some other things that probably shaped me, but not as much shaped the world.
Yeah, these are events where, especially for people who have lived in America and lived in Japan, asking where they were or what do they remember of these events are kind of big deals. So I think it's probably easiest if we just start with one of the dates and we both talk about where we were and then we go to the next one.
Why don't you go ahead with September 11th first?
All right. So during September 11th, I remember that I was in my English class when I found out about it. I think I was in 8th grade at the time. And I was sitting in my English class, and the English teacher, her name was Miss Siciliano. That is not her name anymore. But she turned on the TV, and the entire class just stopped doing whatever it was we were doing. It was, I think we were reading one of the Shakespeare plays, and we just stopped. And we all just stared, watching this as it happened. And the entire school day was us watching this happen and watching the news. We did nothing else that day. I'm sure we thought that we were going to do something else, but I think everybody was too afraid because we were close enough to downtown Chicago that it was the fear that everybody was talking about is, well, what if whatever's happening is going to also target any big city? Well, what if something happens here in Chicago? Then we need to... And so all that was going on. Yeah, I was in 8th grade English class, and our teacher turned on the TV, and we, for the rest of the school day, watched that. And as soon as school ended, we all immediately jumped in the car, went home, and continued watching all the things that were unfolding, seeing what was happening, seeing what they were discovering about what had happened, and everybody just trying to figure out, where do we go from here? What do we do? That was the big thing that I remember of that day, was me just sitting there absolutely just completely not knowing what to do, what we could do. But again, I was in 8th grade. What about you? What were you doing at the time?
I I was in college, and I didn't have an 8 a.m. class that particular day, so I worked in the media department at college for my work-study job, and I was working there. I was a sophomore in college, and normally we have the TV on in some fashion in that job. I mean, because we'd sit at a computer editing something silly, so it was something mindless, so I can edit with TV on, and my boss liked to watch TV in general, so we would have that on. And we had it tuned to CNN, so I was watching it happen live. Well, the news started when the first plane hit the tower, and I was watching it then.
Yep.
And then I saw the second plane hit the tower.
Same.
And then after that, I think I went to our chapel service. I'm not sure when I learned about the Pennsylvania flight. I was in college in Pennsylvania, but not near where that flight went down. But I think they were speculating on the news that the towers were going to fall down, and I was like, no way, really? The towers are going to fall down? The plane hit way up high. So I was thinking that it wasn't going to happen, but by the end of chapel, the speaker announced that the towers had fallen, and I was like, whoa, very interesting. Because I had told my friends at chapel that, like, wow, have you heard? There's planes that hit the World Trade Center. And, none of them had heard because they were either just waking up or coming from class. So they were shocked. And I think one of them said they didn't even believe me when I told them. One of the outcomes of it was I was planning to do my study abroad in Japan the next semester, the spring semester of my sophomore year. And there was a guy, it was a guy I knew of, I guess, an acquaintance. He was going to do his study abroad in that fall semester. He was going to leave like the next few days, but his whole thing got canceled after September 11. And I was like, really interesting choice to cancel. All the flights got really cheap. So I was thinking, wouldn't you want to fly? Isn't it much cheaper? My wife, who was studying in America at the time, said that one of the nice side effects for her was that it was cheaper for her to fly home that Christmas. So she was able to schedule that in because of the cheap flights. But yeah, interesting outcomes. Living near New York City, I didn't know anybody who lost their lives. I guess I was close, but still distant.
Because we were all in middle school, it was a room full of scared children. That's what my experience was with it. Was when we first found out, we saw the first building on fire, and we watched as the second plane hit the building. And we continued watching throughout the entire school day. As I now think as a teacher, I'm sure that they probably tried to still have classes afterwards, but I don't remember any of them.
Yeah, it was interesting. I don't remember what I did the rest of the day either. I think we still had college as normal. But it's college, so it's probably different.
I want to say that my money is on our teachers were all flabbergasted and had no idea what to do because of what had just happened. I know that my English teacher immediately turned on the TV and we watched that. And I want to say the history teacher probably we just continued watching the news. I do not know about my other classes. That's why I think that we probably just watched the news for most of that day, trying to figure out what was going on.
All right. March 11. You said you were in Japan. That was news to me when we talked about it in our episode with Casey.
No, I was not in Japan. I was on my way to Japan.
Right. That's what it was. Yes.
So when March 11th happened, I had been just hired as a English teacher for Japanese schools. Many Japanese schools will hire an English teacher who is a native speaker just so they can help teach pronunciation, conversation, all that sort of stuff. I went through a private company, but I originally got that job and had bought my ticket, was preparing to go, all packed to go, and then March 11th happened where the earthquake and the tsunami hit and all of the things that surrounded it. And I was about, I want to say, a week or 2 weeks out from my flight at that time. And as soon as this happened, every single one of my family and friends basically called me up and asked me if I was still going to go, if I still was confident that I wanted to go and all this stuff. And I just said, well, yeah, this is something that I've been aiming for. This is something that I wanted to do, and I want to still go. And if I didn't go now, I mean, I know everybody else would be running from it, this is the more important time to be going.
Mm-hmm.
And so, despite everything else, and despite the concerns of all of my family and my friends, who basically spent the next 2 weeks trying to convince me that maybe it wasn't the best time or the best condition to be heading to Japan, despite all that, I jumped on a plane and left. Thankfully, my flight was one of the few that did not get canceled, because a lot of planes were getting canceled at the time. And I arrived in Tokyo, and when I had arrived, because of all the things that were happening, there were power outages everywhere. They were trying to go into like energy conservation mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to figure out where I was needing to go to get to my job, when everybody else was just not knowing what was going to happen and if we were going to have enough energy to keep the buildings cooled, because it was approaching the warmer months.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah. So you must have arrived close to the start of Japanese school, so you didn't get to do much touring around probably.
No, I arrived in time to do 1 week of training, and then I was supposed to be teaching. Because, nothing says, yes, I am ready to teach students like a week of training. Especially when all the people they were hiring were native speakers, and they weren't teachers. None of us were full teachers. We were just mostly kids who had just gotten a bachelor's degree and said, hey, I want to work and live in Japan. That was basically the demographic of the majority of us there. For example, I had my wonderful Bible and philosophy degree, had never taught anything in my life, and so I got my week of training and then was in front of students pretending that I knew what in the world I was talking about. It worked out. When I first arrived in Japan, the company I worked for, I will not say their name because I do not want to debase them too badly, but they paid you for when you were working. So during the summer months, they did not pay you. And during the times that they did pay you, it was a barely living wage. So during the summer months, I had to choose what days of the week I was eating.
Ooh.
And I did this job for a couple of years. I enjoyed the job, but living like that was eventually what made me go, okay, I'm just going to go back and get my teaching license, because I couldn't keep doing a job like that. But yeah, I had to choose what days I was eating. I was barely surviving myself. It was an interesting time for me. But, at the very least, I was able to be with the students who I taught.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you?
Well, it was a school day, and one of the interesting things about it was that we had actually run a fire drill the day before. And we often run earthquake drills that have evacuations, because not all earthquakes will require evacuations, but of course this one did. But we had run a fire drill the day before, so actually it was very easy for students to evacuate because they were all in the same spots. This was back before we did block scheduling, so every kid was in the exact same room the day before at the exact same time. Interesting for me, though, I was working from home at the time. My oldest daughter was born, and my second daughter was well on her way, and we had worked out my schedule with the head of school that I'd be able to work from home. I think by that point it was a few days of the week. It wasn't every day. But in the end, working from home as the IT guy actually was wonderful, especially when your kids take naps, because I was able to get a lot done working from home. Nobody was distracting me. My daughter was sleeping. Occasionally, I'd help her set up some toy that she wanted to play with, and then she'd be off and playing. So working from home actually worked pretty well. So yeah, I was working from home, and it definitely started shaking, and I realized, wow, this is going to be quite an earthquake. So I picked up my daughter as she was sleeping on her futon on the floor, and I picked her up and stood in the doorway with her then. I don't think there would have been anything in the area that would have fallen down on her, even if it was even more shaky, but still, I was like, well, stand in the door. I happened to be coaching track that season. I think it was my last season that I was going to coach track for quite a while, and I still actually haven't returned from that. That was my last season of coaching. I had taken like a year off, maybe 2 years off before that. I was going to coach this season, and that was going to be it. And usually what would happen is my wife would come home and trade places with me watching my daughter, and I'd go coach track. But she wasn't coming, and I realized, wow, things must be different at school. So I packed my daughter up into the stroller, and we headed off to school to see how things were going. And everybody was still out on the field, actually. And I must have headed out. It happened at, 2:45? I think we headed out at 3:30, and everybody was still out on the field. And at that time, I helped the head of school send out an all-parent email saying that they had to come pick up their child. We didn't want to send them home because we didn't know if all of the parents would have returned from downtown if they were working or be stranded somewhere themselves. So everybody had to come pick up their child. Well, at least every elementary and I think every middle school. High school might have been a different story, but at least every elementary and every middle school had to come pick up their child. Or at least call in to say that, and maybe every high school parent had to call in to say that they were okay and willing for their child to come home, something like that.
Yeah.
So we had to print out checklists so that the secretaries could check the kids off as they got picked up. And there were a bunch of parents that couldn't come. So the other tech guy at the time brought his DVD collection and brought it to school and started playing some DVDs in the auditorium because his wife likes Disney. He had a bunch of Disney cartoons. I helped out in the cafeteria cooking hot dogs. Oh, my wife took my daughter home and checked out. We had only minor damage. A few pictures fell off the shelves and cracked. That's the extent of it. We didn't have much damage at all, but basically no damage. So I helped in the cafeteria cooking hot dogs for the kids that stuck around and needed some dinner. But everybody did get picked up or go home with a teacher or something like that, or another, like the arrangements were made for all of the kids. Not all of them got to their parents, but arrangements were made for all of the kids that evening. Interestingly, there was no school for quite a while after that, too. Like, we didn't return to school for like another month. And a lot of it had to do with the brownouts. There were announcements on the loudspeaker system that the town has here of pending brownouts. Like you said, areas would go off at different times to help save energy. And the town where we live, they would always say that there was going to be brownouts. So I would always go into school, shut everything down for the brownout, and then the power wouldn't actually go off. Our town was one of the lucky towns that actually didn't go off. I think it has to do with the fact that we power the train line.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a big power station here that powers the train line. So I think it had to do with that. But even with all the announcements, like they would make an announcement and say, the power's going off at this time, the power's going off at this time. And then that time would come and there would be an announcement that says, the power outage has been canceled. And it would happen like 2 minutes after the power outage was scheduled. It's like, wait a minute, couldn't you tell us before before I shut all the servers off? So then I'd turn everything back on and go home. But yeah, I think it had to do with the fact that we have a big power station that powers the train line in our area. Because that train line operated pretty much the whole time still. So I remember the cell phones were all down. You couldn't make any cell phone calls out on the field. I think it was because everybody was calling everybody else to make sure they were okay. Our internet service was fine, so that's how we could send out emails. Some of our staff were downtown at the time. Well, they couldn't get back to school via the trains because the trains downtown were closed, even if our train line was operating. So I know one of our staff walked back from downtown. It took a few hours, but he made it. He was downtown because our school was changing government statuses back then, our status change.
Oh, yeah.
He said he walked back along one of the major roads, and some of our major roads have a sign with a whale on them.
Yeah.
That says, in emergencies, this road is used by emergency vehicles only. Because, again, it's a major drag, and if there's an emergency, you want the emergency vehicles flowing through the major drag.
Yeah.
But, of course, he said that road was jam-packed, and nobody was getting off the road. So that sign did not work. There were lots of cars on that road, and emergency vehicles were not able to pass, he said. So I was like, yeah, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the interesting things, the government said that they would evacuate us if we wanted to. The American government
Oh.
said that I would evacuate me if I wanted to. The American government sent out an email that said if we wanted evacuation, we could show up at the embassy or somewhere, I forget, some place, and they would board us on a plane and fly us out. We wouldn't know where we were landing, and we would have to pay for the flight. I think they told us up front what it was, and it was not cheap. It was not terribly expensive, but it would be on the higher end of what I'd be willing to pay for a flight to America. And they said, you don't know where you're landing. You'll just land in America somewhere, which is hilarious because America's not a small country.
Yeah, you live in Chicago, they land you in San Jose.
Right, exactly. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking it's going to be West Coast somewhere, which means it's a really expensive ticket. Oh, and they would only take American citizens. So my wife is not an American citizen. So what do? Leave with my daughter and leave my wife here with my second unborn child? No. So, yeah, it's like, how is this a good option? I mean, like, maybe it's a good option for a few people, but I don't quite see how this is a good option for many people at all. So I was like, yeah, I'm not taking that deal. If you really wanted to evacuate us, then open that up a little wider. Maybe have the flight free or include spouses of American citizens. I guess if you did that, though, you'd be taking...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would open up a lot more people because I bet you there's a lot of Americans married to Japanese.
Yep.
Or things like that. But anyway, that was an interesting email to get from the government. If you want to evacuate, show up at this place, this time, and we'll fly you off. And you pay this much, and then you'll have to fly to wherever else you want to be.
Yeah. I found it very funny because while that was all going on, I was flying in.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, there were... Nobody from our school left, which was kind of nice. But there were some people that I know from other schools that people did leave the country from other international schools.
Yeah.
At that time, which was a little disconcerting. I actually really enjoyed the track season following that event. Not many kids returned to track to do sports the rest of that season. And because of that, I had basically the most dedicated kids returned. And coaching the most dedicated kids is just really nice. Not having to worry about kids who complain or kids who they were so nice. I had coached those particular kids for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I would be easily able to say to them, go do this workout, and have complete faith that they, just by saying a simple sentence like that, they would know exactly what I mean and carry out the whole workout without complaint or without skipping anything, possibly even do a little more, and then come back with it done, right? Those kids, no fear that they were going to cheat on practice or cheat out on themselves. No, they were kids who wanted to improve themselves. So if I tell them what to do, they were going to do it. Part of the reason I say that was because we were short-staffed in track that year. Mm-hmm. Again, I was only one of the assistant coaches. I was the distance running coach. And occasionally the head coach would ask me to do something other than coaching distance runners. A lot of the reason he asked me to do that was because he knew that I would be able to tell my distance runners to do something and they would just do it. Mm-hmm. That's part of the reason. He didn't say it like this, but you go babysit this group of jumpers or this group of sprinters, coach them whatever you can, but knowing that I'm not the expert in those fields, but go help them out and just have your distance runners do whatever you want them to do. And that would happen. But those kids, they would just do it. It was wonderful coaching them. So nice. And one of the most exciting races that I've ever watched happened at the very end of that year in the 2 mile with one of my runners being one of the lead runners for most of the season, except for about one runner from another school. He was much faster. At the beginning of the season, for sure, he was much faster. I said, you're doing very well. Looks like at finals, because this was coming up to finals, during that final race, he, for a while there, almost caught that guy that was way out in front. And it was super exciting in the last few laps where he was getting quite close and that guy was getting scared that he was on his tail. He didn't actually get him. I think he passed him on the last curve, but then the other guy passed him back to sprint to the end. But man, was it exciting. In a 2 mile race, right? Only 8 laps around the track. Very exciting race to watch. Only 8 laps. Sorry, I guess I'm a distance runner. I guess you can tell.
Yeah, I hear only 8 laps, and I'm just like, no, just no.
No, but that's the best race, let me tell you.
I think I've said this. I'm very dangerous over short distances. We dwarves are natural-born sprinters.
That was one of my most exciting races. One of my most exciting races, coach. I have a few other good coaching races that I've watched. Races watched as a coach, I guess. Let me say it that way.
This week, we're looking at a Fanta Premier Orange.
Mm-hmm.
So first things first, this one also has sediment.
Oh, I didn't even look, but yes, it is a premium drink, so it will.
Yep.
So it goes along with our other Premier drinks. We had the Premier Peach from Scott and Premier Grape, I think, right?
Yep. And am I reading this right? 16% fruit juice?
Yeah, 16% fruit juice. I just saw that too.
We're moving up in the world. We're actually getting real juice.
Almost 100%.
Sure. Almost 100. Rounding error.
Well, compared to 1%, it's much closer. Yeah, I think there was a Premier ginger ale, but we had that great Seijo Ishii ginger ale, so I didn't feel like we needed to buy the Premier ginger ale.
Yeah, great. That's the word I would use. Great.
The wonderful Seijo Ishii ginger ale. So
it was great.
And plus, I'm not so sure I trust Fanta to make a ginger ale. For drinks, I trust. Ginger ale, it probably was good, but still. We had so many other fun drinks at the time. So Premier Orange.
Premier Orange. I mean, I anticipate it being an orange drink. I mean, there's not much else we can anticipate, I think, with this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, the same 380 milliliters as the other premium ones. And I think I bought this one when the price did dip a little bit. Because the Premier drinks sell for more than normal 500 milliliter bottles. But I think this one dipped it a little bit. I don't think it was as cheap as 500, but I think the price went down 10 to 15 yen. So I was like, oh, okay, it's a little cheaper. I'll buy it.
All right. Let's see.
So we'll see. Hopefully people didn't overlook it. Hopefully it's still good. It smells like orange. It smells like real orange more than fake oranges.
Yeah.
I would say it does taste better than the normal Fanta orange.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the normal Fanta orange is just too sugary, almost is the best way to describe it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's too artificial.
Wow, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I like this.
I think it's surprisingly real.
Yeah.
Real is an interesting word for a drink that you taste, but I think it feels more real to me than the Fanta orange.
It's not like you're drinking carbonated orange juice.
Yes.
But it tastes like there's really juice in there.
Right.
Which, I mean...
Yes, I think that's what it is. It is possibly slightly watered down orange juice with carbonation in it.
I would say maybe with some more syrup in it, too, to fill out the rest of the flavor. Because if it was just soda water and orange juice, then...
It'd be too thin?
I think it'd be too thin. Maybe... No, I know. It tastes as if you took soda water and you mixed it with orange juice concentrate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's where it is.
It's pretty good. It does say Minute Maid oranges, too, interestingly. I do wonder why they team up with American brands sometimes.
Because the American brand will pay for it?
Possibly, yeah. Although, I guess, is Fanta an American brand to begin with?
No, it's German, I think. Originally, at least.
I think it's owned by Coca-Cola here, though.
Possibly.
Yeah. Fanta's the Coca-Cola company. It says that on the side.
Fanta originated as a Coca-Cola substitute during the American trade embargo of Nazi Germany. Basically, Nazi Germany was saying, we're not going to buy Coca-Cola products, and so they made Fanta.
And now Coke has bought them, huh?
And now Coke has bought them, yes.
Full circle.
Capitalism always wins.
I would say, I think this is higher than a 6.
Yeah.
I would say this is a 7.
I was leaning towards a 7 on this one.
I think the only thing that's knocking it down, perhaps, is the fact that it's a tiny bottle, and I'm almost already at half.
Oh, I'm past half.
Yeah.
I would say this is a 7 for me. It's nothing life-changing, but it's good. It's good. I'm happy with this.
Mm-hmm. Good. Let's move on.
We have a snack.
Ryan has provided us with Sakura Kitkats, which is very timely.
Yes, because it is now Sakura season here.
Yes, the petals are falling. In fact, they were falling on my driveway and stuff, so I had to clean some off. So it is very pretty outside.
I believe it was 2 episodes ago that we had the Sakura drink, the Sakura Cola.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now we have the Sakura Kitkat. They are very small.
Yes.
They are very small.
The wrapping is very pink.
Yes. The sugar coating almost smells like white chocolate, but white chocolate with a pink shade, like food coloring or something.
Pink tint. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see.
All right, let's see.
That's good.
It is good. Actually, I was surprised. It doesn't actually quite taste like other things that taste Sakura.
Mm-hmm.
It actually has a little bit of a cinnamon flavor to it. Would you say that?
Yeah. Yeah, just a touch. The biscuit almost reminds me a little bit of Snickerdoodles.
Yeah, I would say this is a good one.
Yeah, I'm happy with this one.
Man, we've had a lot of good Kit Kats.
And we've had a couple of not so good Kit Kats.
Yeah, but I mean, recently we've had a lot of good ones, I guess, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm just waiting for one of our ones to strike out.
Well, it probably comes soon. Yeah, I think this actually, I always forget where Ume was good.
Ume was good. I think this one's the best one we've had so far.
I think possibly too. I think Peach Parfait was good, but still, I think this one still wins out.
Yeah, I think this one beats Peach Parfait in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tear through all these Kit Kats and share none with anybody.
And I think I'm pretty surprised at that, because sometimes Sakura flavor things are weird. They're not bad, but they're not always good. Well, I always think Sakura flavor things are funny because it's not like you're going up and eating the Sakura trees. So where do they get flavor from that? But
I don't know. So the real question is, are you leaving any for your family?
I'll probably give some to my daughters. You gave me quite a bunch, so. Yeah, I do like it.
Whenever I buy a bag to share with you, I always just split it halfway down, which is giving me far more than I probably need.
That's fine. Well, this week I had Ryan read Record of a Spaceborn Few. It is the third book in the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers. We have covered the first two already, Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and A Closed and Common Orbit. And this is the third one in that series.
Yep, and book 4 is due out later this year.
Very soon.
Yeah, expected publication is April 20th.
Well, the fourth one may have just come out by the time you listen to this podcast. So I'm actually kind of curious to the fourth book, too. I didn't know much about the third book starting to read it, and I don't know what the fourth book is about either.
Based solely on what some of the things early readers say, it sounds like it's somewhere closer to a feel of The Long Way.
Oh, okay.
Mixing in a little bit of Close and Common Orbit.
Ooh, okay. Interesting. Okay.
But before we get into all that, I think that it is necessary, as always, to say that if you haven't read the book, you should probably go ahead and read the book so you can be involved in the conversation. But if you've already read the book, I will try and give you a bit of a refresher course to help you remember what the book was all about and give you a little bit of a summary so that you can keep up on it. Record of a Spaceborn Few is a story of a few people related to the Exodus fleet and their lives on board a ship of the fleet, the Asteria. The characters that it centers around are Tessa, a laborer and a mother of 2 children, Kip, a teenager trying to find his way in life, Isabel, an archivist, Sawyer, an immigrant to this ship, and Aeus, a caretaker who performs the funeral rites for the Exodus fleet. The story opens many years before the major events of the story, when one of the ships of the Exodus fleet, the Oxymoko, is destroyed, and this affects all of the characters of the story in some way, shape, or form. The rest of the story centers around their lives, specifically around the time that coincides with the end of Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which I found really interesting, by the way, but we'll get into that later. And the story centers around each of their stories. A large part of it just giving a slice of life kind of story. But the plot really takes off somewhere near the middle to the later half of the middle when Sawyer signs on with a group of scavengers who decide that they are going to scavenge off of the broken ship of the Oxymoko. During the scavenge, Sawyer realizes that what they're doing is illegal and is not wanting to participate in it anymore, but in his haste to get done with the job, he unfortunately dies. The remaining part of the story is each of the characters and their responses to Sawyer's death, and how this then takes their lives forward from this point. Tessa, whose daughter has always been afraid of the hull breaking after witnessing the Oxomoco being destroyed, decides that for her family, it's best if they leave the ship. Kip, who always thought that his life lived outside the ship, realizes that being part of the remembrance of the ship and the remembrance of the human race and their history is the thing that calls to him the most. Isabel, the archivist, helps train Kip and decides that that is where her path lies. And A.S., the caretaker, finds her position is best suited for helping train new immigrants so that we don't have another Sawyer who gets caught up in the wrong crowd. A lot of the story is based around their stories, their normal living.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. First, I have questions about that. But first, Ryan, what did you think?
I liked it. I did. I have been trying to decide where I place it among the others. The other Becky Chambers books that we've read.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's good, but I think I like the other two better.
Yes, that is where I fall too. I think it's good. In fact, one of the strengths it has is that I do feel like I'm putting on a glove again. The same glove I've worn already. It's well worn, but it just fits, and it fits nicely. And I think this story is like that too. It's like, yes, I'm back into this world.
Because she does her world building so well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the thing that many people might say against her stories, especially now that we've read 3 of them, is the thing that they're not centered necessarily around a plot. They're centered around a character or characters and their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is a plot. Yes, it happens, but that's not the main thing. The main thing is the characters.
Yeah, this one is a little bit maybe too thin on the plot, which is too bad, because the characters are built up really well.
Yeah.
I almost wish the conflict... while I was reading it halfway through, I was like, wow, is there going to be some really big event that's tying everything together? And I think I might have even mentioned that to you when I was listening to it the first time a few months ago. And I was a little disappointed when it came up, and I was like, well, here's the tying event. But I actually thought it was going to tie them together closer.
Yeah.
Yes, almost everybody was in the same room at the end.
Almost.
But not really, and that was only for a minute. So I thought it was going to tie together even closer. So, wait, was the Hermogian at the final funeral?
No, the Hermogian was not.
Yeah, and neither was Tessa. But again, I thought there was going to be at least a moment where everybody was together, and there wasn't that. Not to say that there probably needed to be, but still there wasn't. While the final event was good, it didn't quite tie everything together. I liked the final event, Sawyer's death.
I think the event led to all of their decisions, and I think that's the tying event, where in the same way that the Oxomoco blowing up at the beginning directed all their paths in one way, Sawyer's death in the later part of the book redirected all their lives again. So I thought that parallel was nice.
And in fact, I was actually thinking Kip's story was one of my least favorite until Sawyer's death. And I was like, oh, now Kip's story is getting interesting.
Yeah, because until that point, he's just a rebellious teen. And we've seen the rebellious teen story before.
But then when he was torn and the amount of studying he did and things...
Yep.
That really gave his character more life.
Yeah, I would feel the same way, that until that point, I wasn't really into Kip.
Yes, you were right. All the characters... So Kip might have been the weakest, if you want to make that argument.
Until after Sawyer.
Right. In fact, I really liked Sawyer, and when he died, I was like, what? Sawyer died? I was like, oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
I thought his story was one of the most interesting ones. I guess then it did still continue to become interesting.
Yeah.
So that was kind of good. I thought that all of the storylines were very good. AS was interesting. And again, AS contributed... AS and Isabel contributed a lot to the world building because, again, their jobs in the ships are very different than jobs we have here on Earth. So that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
I think maybe Tessa's connection to the group was probably one of the more tenuous connections too. I mean, I liked her storyline, but it was tenuous.
It wasn't connected with the rest of the things that were going on.
Besides the fact that she was living on the same ship. That was it. So I do wish her connection was more stronger, but it was still good plot.
I think the fact that her story wasn't connected strongly is also what allowed her to reasonably be able to make the decision to leave the ship at the end, though. Because if it was stronger, then she would have those connections with Isabel or with Ayaz. So I think it not being that strong, although I do have to say that now I'm intrigued to see if there's any sort of callback to Tessa and her brother getting time where they're spending time together in a future book.
Now that she's planetside.
We've had all these build-ups and we've had all these investments in all these different characters. I kind of want to see them all interact, like all the ones from different stories interact.
Yeah.
But I know that that'll probably never come to be because the author would probably say, like, all the ones that you can make up in your mind will be better than what can be written.
Yeah.
And so it's best to leave that there. That way you can leave it for all the fan writers.
Although I want to talk too about the character of the human race.
Ooh, okay.
Because one of the interesting things to me about this book, I mean, it's mentioned in the other books, but of course this book shines the whole light on it, especially with the Harmagian doing research about the humans and trying to explain them to the rest of the Galactic Corps. That, the humans have their own characteristics in general, right? I mean, Smelly being an interesting one of them, the one played for comic relief. But I do think that humans like to depict themselves as being strong, and the humans in this book are the furthest, well, not the furthest from it, but still are very far from it.
The human race on Earth, as it is the dominant species.
Right.
And in all of our stories, many times we tend to be that. We tend to be the dominant species. Even if there are other species, even if there are like elves and dwarves, humans have a big role. In this one, humans are not that.
Yet culture is still a big thing, right? Even if we're not going to be the strongest race in this galaxy, we still have our culture and we're going to hold on to it.
Yeah.
And I like that because, I mean, that happens all over the world now. That's not a new thing, for sure. But that is something that's happening all over the world, and it's something that we still value here. So I do like that. It's not alt history because it's not history, but it's like an alternate view of the future than Star Wars and Star Trek that I view the lens of the future through.
So there's a game called Mass Effect. Now, Mass Effect is a sci-fi story where the humans are the newest race to be welcomed into basically the galactic community. And because they are the young race, they are also very much in that galaxy not listened to. Because they've just barely figured out intergalactic travel. Why should we listen to them when we've been around and we've been doing all these things for thousands of years? I've seen other stories that have done that.
I think it's done well here too, right?
Yeah.
I did like the perspective and that the humans don't want to be looked at like the poor race. So, I mean, it's definitely something that you have to look at. How are we treating people?
There's one of the books that we use in our humanities course. I think it's like When Helping Hurts or something like that. Yeah, When Helping Hurts is a book that we use. It's basically talking about how many times when trying to help in hurting areas, in hurting nations, or in areas of disaster, we can often unintentionally do more harm than good. So the book encourages people to find dignity in everyone, to empower people, that sort of idea. rather than trying to throw money at the problem, to find ways to empower a person. There's so many nuances to that book. Like, I am loosely remembering it from when I read it way back when, because I don't teach that class. That's the basic idea behind that sort of premise. And so, yeah, you're right. The humans in this situation are in that position where they are the species that don't want to be viewed as needing help, don't want to be viewed as a charity case.
Well, and what's interesting, too, the Harmagian goes over at the end saying, yeah, don't help the humans in ways that will hinder them, right? He talks about some examples of that, but possibly gives some ways out of that. But one of the questions I have is, I think, well, in some ways it seems as if the society that they do have is on the brink of collapsing just because of numbers, right? I mean, I think of it similar to a brain drain situation where small countries have smart people that go off to college in the big countries and then stay in the big countries because that's where the money is, because they built up all their knowledge and now they're valuable, so they stay in the big country, which will pay them more because they don't want to move back to the small country because that's not going to pay them enough.
There's that. But the thing that I felt like was being addressed at the end was, yeah, the Exodin fleet might not be the Exodin fleet that it was, but maybe we can adapt and maybe we can change and maybe we can address some of those things.
Yeah, and hold on to and teach some of the things that make us who we really are.
Hold on to the idea of, hey, let's look out for our neighbor. Make sure that nobody goes hungry. Make sure that everybody has a home.
An equal-sized home.
Teach those things.
The fairness aspect is very interesting, right? Everybody's got the same size home, and we all have to work together.
It sounds like they had done everything they could to basically go full commune. And then had to force the situation to make sure that that did not break, because if it broke in any way, shape, or form, like if anybody exploited that system, then that means that there would be a breakdown of all the other things, which is what they were aiming for with longevity. So
sameness. It's another book about sameness. Well, this one's not as strong as The Giver.
No.
And this was only sameness in certain areas. There were definitely jobs of prestige and things. So
yeah, there were. And it was more along the lines of, it was basically, honestly, it was communism. There's no way to get around it. It was communism. It's the ideal of the communism.
Right.
Not communism as it looks today.
Yeah.
But communism as it was written about in economic books. Everyone is working for the common good. That sort of ideal.
Because, I mean, they still have some capitalistic stuff in here, too. You save up your credits to buy something fun.
And that came because they got connection with the outer world. The closed system was designed to be the communist idea, I think, where everybody is looking out for each other. You do a job so that you can contribute to the society, which then helps the entire ship keep running. And that was basically it. And then your needs would be taken care of. So, and then when they added things in, that's when things went a little wonky. But yeah, like I said, it was designed to be that sort of ideal so that the society wouldn't break down because of unequal treatment. It was an interesting take, but yeah, like, it depended so heavily on nobody exploiting that system, which is where things can break down in modern society.
Yeah, the scavengers were definitely exploiting the system.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And then when the scavengers exploit the system, then everything starts to break down.
Yeah, I do like the solution AS comes up with, right? Again, a lot of the problem is lack of knowledge. A lot of the problem in things in general is lack of knowledge. So, hey, let's have a class to teach people just some basic stuff. Sounded like a great idea to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is too bad that Sawyer didn't have something like that, but it would have been helpful for him.
Yeah, but, I think that being learned and going, okay, well, we can take it from here and learn from Sawyer's death to make sure that there are no other Sawyers is a great thing. Because that turns back to okay, you can't, undo your past, but you can learn from it and take it in a good direction. I liked Tessa. I did like Tessa, even though she didn't have a strong connection with the rest of the characters of the story. I liked how that entire dynamic went the entire time.
She's the everyman. She's grounding a lot of the story with, you struggle with these problems where you are, she struggles with these problems where she is. Same kind of person.
And I think that having her make that decision to leave at the end for her daughter, basically, I thought that was an excellent character choice. And I did like that the husband decided to, oh, this is going on. I'm going to come back and be with my family at this time because they need me now. I liked all those choices. I did have to ask, how did he get back so quickly when they're away on like this long haul trip? Like, how did he get back so quickly? But, you know, space and technology.
He used those tunnel jump drive thingy.
A pinhole drive? Those are illegal. Or are you talking about like the pods that the characters used at the very beginning of Long Way to the Small Angry Planet?
Yes. I think he used one of those pod things, right? That was my headcanon on that. Yes. Sorry.
Okay. I was guessing that.
I don't know if that was said. Maybe I did just assume that.
It was not said. It was definitely not said. I was looking for it.
Yeah, I think he used one of those pinhole things to come home quickly. Those pinhole pods.
Okay, I can see that. But yeah, I think as a whole, I liked it because I do like slice of life kind of stories. I do think that it would be a stronger story if there were a more solid linking and a more solid event that linked everything. Instead of just Sawyer dies. I think if there was something else that really linked all these stories together, it could be a better story. Like, I can't think of what it would be, but because that's the thing is, that's my one complaint about it is that I wish that there was a stronger
plot,
a stronger connecting device, basically.
But don't give up on any of the existing character buildup. Like I would,
because I love the character buildup. I love all that.
No trading any of that.
Yeah, you know, that's the thing. I just want it all.
No, but we can only have two of the three things, Ryan.
Then I choose
character
and plot.
Yep. I liked it too. I think I did also agree. I think it's the third on my list of the three books. I mean, I think this is very similar to The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. And I didn't notice that probably as I was reading Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, but there's a lot, because the plot is woven through. There's buildup inherent in the plot because they're getting somewhere. They're going to this place and they're going to arrive and going to have to do their tunnel thing. There's no buildup in this story. So you don't know where you are because, like I mentioned to you too, I'm halfway through the book and nothing's happened yet. I made a comment similar to that. So I was like, something's going to have to happen because there's all this buildup.
Yep.
But there was nothing in the middle. There was nothing that kept me. I mean, besides the fact that the stories were, these slices of life were interesting and I enjoyed them. There was nothing else to keep me in where, like, Long Way to a Small Angry Planet has a built-in plot thing that's keeping me like, okay, they're going to arrive at some point, so I know something's coming. And when there was nothing with that. To me, I think there's more plot in A Closed and Common Orbit, but there's still a lot of character stuff, which was excellent.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide among the three of them. Record of the Spaceborn Few is number 3 in my book, and I'm trying to decide between the first two. Which one would take number 1?
To me, it's definitely Closed and Common Orbit. The struggle of Sidra.
Oh, yeah.
And Pepper.
It is really good. Yeah, I think I would have to agree with you on that one.
The only negative to A Closed and Common Orbit is there's less characters, so there's less of getting to know lots of things, right? A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet has lots of characters, so lots we have to learn. It sets up the whole galaxy through the aliens on the ship and then through the places they visit. So there was a lot of setup, and which was great, right? And wonderful for the first book. But then we get super focused on 2 to 4 characters in Closed and Common Orbit. So there's a lot less.
Yeah.
And the world is already built up. Like, I do wonder. I mean, I was actually thinking. I was trying not to say this in the opening because I almost wonder what you think. You could probably read these books out of order, really.
Oh yeah.
And not suffer too much. Although, because there's a lot of world building in the first book,
Actually, I could see being able to read Record of a Spaceborn Few in any point.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like for you to understand A Close and Common Orbit, I think you have to have read A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet.
Yeah. Well, enough is explained, but you miss out.
Yeah.
Even though the important stuff is explained, there's still more you want to read. You shouldn't read it out of order. You can. You probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, A Record of a Spaceborn Few could be read anytime, I think.
Outside of this one, if you're looking closely, will spoil the ending of A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because you will know that the ship got shot at and he's fine.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't know of any of the other stuff. Oh, and you know that the AI, Lovey, doesn't make it.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
You find out that too.
And that's a pretty big giveaway. Yeah.
So maybe not.
You should read them in order. Yeah.
You got to read them in order.
At least 1 and 2 or 3. Doesn't matter where you read 2 or 3 because the endings of each book doesn't affect the others.
1 has to be first, though.
Because you don't want to get spoiled that Lovey dies, because that's critical to the end of that book.
And that's the thing is, because of all the character development in 1, that's why I was like, 1 was still really good.
Yeah.
That's why I was like going back and forth between 1 and 2 on which one's my favorite.
And I wonder if, because we're super focused on certain characters in Close and Common Orbit, does that make it better? Maybe. I think the plot was also the backstory and the plot tied together made Close and Common Orbit very good, I think, too.
Yeah.
Because we were always going back and forth between the past and the present.
And the other side of it was the fact that Close and Common Orbit, the plot was directly character driven and character related.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the others were like, this was their job, or this was something that happened on their home and they had to deal with it. Close and Common Orbit was, this is something that is important to me, and so I am doing this. More character initiated. Let me say that better.
Yep.
More character initiated. But yeah.
Yeah, good book still. I mean, again,
yeah,
we're nitpicking at smaller things at this point, right?
At this point, we're saying, I mean, it's like saying, there are 3 great books. I mean, it's like you have 3 8-foot-tall guys, and 1 is actually only 7'11".
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're saying, really.
Yes. The line of greatness at 8 foot was arbitrary, right? So, yeah, this book is still very good, even if it's not meeting some of the plot expectations. But at the same time, that might not be what we're going for, right? We were going for the character-driven stuff, so.
Yeah, and this has got a great character-driven story, very slice-of-life feel. So if you like having something that's more of a character observation kind of story, this will be right up your alley. Although, again, you need to read the first book first.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't want to get spoiled.
Although if they've now listened to us, they've already gotten spoiled.
That's true.
So if you've gotten this far and you haven't read it, and then you hear that statement, then you already know all the spoilers, so it's a moot point at this point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So what do you got for me next week?
Oh, actually, no, what do you have for me next week, Ryan?
Oh, yes, that's right. Now I remember I'm doing things. Well, years back, there was a writer's strike, and a small musical web series was created called Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along Blog. I really enjoyed this. This has some very famous actors who got together and made this along with a very famous director. Mm-hmm. And they made this just having fun during a time where nobody was making TV, nobody was making movies, and during the middle of the writer's strike, just because they were like, let's do something. And I really enjoy it, and I think you will too.
We'll have to see.
It is a comedy musical about a supervillain in training.
Sounds fun. I look forward to watching it.
Yep. It's a small web series. I think it ends up being somewhere around an hour and 20 minutes if you watch them all.
I think it was 45 minutes.
Oh, 45 minutes. Oh, yeah, it's only 45 minutes. Okay, yeah. Sounds good. Now, we hope you enjoyed listening to us talk about Record of a Spaceborn Few, but we just also want you to know that the conversation doesn't have to end here. The discussion can continue with us through Reddit at r/myhilltodieon, or by contacting us through Twitter at myhilltodieon. You can also reach us by email, which is at, to no one's surprise, myhilltodieon@gmail.com. And finally, we also upload all of our episodes to our YouTube channel, which is also named, say it with me now, folks, My Hill to Die On.
To see if we can just get one more person
to join us on our Hill to Die On.
Did I say just get or get just?
I don't know.
I don't know what I do every time. I wonder. Anyway.
If you feel like you want to re-record it, go right ahead.
I think it's okay. I only stumbled very slightly, right?
Yeah, I didn't notice it.
Okay.
And I will be completely fair and say there's been a couple of times where I've said some really weird things in that intro, and I haven't noticed it until after we get to the recording.
That's fun. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to finish your video. Sorry. But I figured we're probably going to talk about it, so I should at least get closer to finishing it. I watched Winter Soldier with my wife instead. The TV show. Have you seen the TV show?
I have not been watching the TV show. I've not been keeping up on TV shows lately. That's really what it comes down to. Everybody asks me about all these new TV shows that I know I would love and I know I would want to watch, but I just haven't.
I only watched like 2 shows.
Yep, I have not been watching TV. I have not been keeping up on TV shows lately. I have been more focused on trying to catch up on a few games that I've let fall into the backlog.
Good goal.
And then doing all of my side projects.
Mm-hmm. Are you working on your second video?
I am. I finished playing the game and I was trying to re-encode a smaller size today. And it failed twice because I had not cleared off enough space.
Yeah.
And so I just finished clearing off enough space and went, oh, I'm going to have to record the podcast tonight. And so I'm going to wait until after the podcast before I try the next re-encode. But yeah, no, that one's done recording, and I'm very happy with how that game ended. Like, it was everything that I was hoping it was going to be.
Oh yeah, it's the one you talked about last time, right?
Yes. Wander Song. It was a beacon of so much positivity and goodness that I was just like, this is amazing. This is awesome. So I loved that. I needed that. So how's your spring break gone?
It's going well.
Going? Yeah, you know, in your last...
Finishing up soon. Yeah, too soon. Oh well.
It is what it is. We gotta get back to work. Real quick, before I go into the summary, I could not remember for the life of me what the name of the ship that blows up at the beginning.
Oh, Oxomoko.
Oxomoko?
Yeah. How do you spell it? Let me see.
Yeah, because I was just doing it through listening, and I was like, what in the world? And so in trying to write my summary, I'm like, the ship.
The ship that blows up. Oxomoko. Oxomoco.
Oxomoko.
The other ship, most of our... Yeah, they live on the Asteria.
Asteria. Thank you. You can also reach us at by email, which is at, to no one's surprise, myhilltodieon@gmail.com. And clearly I'm tired because I'm starting to stumble over that.